In this episode, I'm talking to my friend and fellow Show Her the Money producer, Dawn Lafreeda. And I am so excited for you to hear all about her journey franchising Denny's restaurants and being an amazing advocate for women all around. And we are going to talk about all things franchising, which is something we haven't talked a lot about on the podcast before. So I'm really excited for you to hear about that. And we will also dive into all of the things Show Her the Money. Enjoy the show. This is the Angel Next Door podcast, where we will talk about all things angel investing, what it is, who does it, how do we find them, what does it mean to invest in an early stage company? If you have ever wondered how you can affect the change you want to see in the world, then tune in to learn more. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Angel Next Door podcast. I am here today with Dawn Lafreeda. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am
Exciting.
So excited to talk to you. You are my hero. You have done so many amazing things to help support women. Your journey is just incredible, going from hostess to now the woman who owns more Denny's franchise restaurants than anyone in the world. So I'm just thrilled to talk to you, not only about your journey with Denny's, but also we are together in the Show Her the Money movie.
Yes.
And you are an executive producer, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story. And then we'll talk a little bit about money too, because, you know, who doesn't love a little money conversation?
Well, if you watch the movie, you know I love money.
Yes, I love that part of the movie. So let's start out. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So, you know, I grew up from very humble beginnings, and I think that drove me to want to be successful. Came from very little. So I decided that, you know, if I was ever going to be anything or make anything of myself, it was going to have to be out of my own grit and determination. So fortunately, I got a job at Denny's when I was 16 years old as a hostess. And I quickly saw that it was the waitresses, that's what they were called at the time, not servers. The waitresses were making all the money. And so I begged my manager, please let me be a waitress. And he's like, no, you're the best hostess I've ever had. We can't lose you on the weekends. No, you can't be a waitress. I said to my manager, I'll make a deal with you. If you let me wait tables on any shift you can give me, I will continue to hostess for you on the weekends. So that was my entry into waitressing and making tips. And I soon became the best waitress, and no longer did he want me to hostess, because I could work a whole dining room by myself. I have freakishly long arms. Anyway, so I saved all my tips. I saw it as a sales job, an opportunity to, the better service I gave, the more money I would make. And as a broke, you know, teenager who grew up with very little, it was exciting to me to be earning my own money. And an opportunity came where Denny's bought out a chain of restaurants called Hobo Joe's and Colony Kitchens. And they had one lonely restaurant in a tiny little mining town that they didn't want to convert to a Denny's. And that became my opportunity. A friend of mine and myself, we bought it off credit cards and tips and a couple of small loans from family. And then in the 80s, oil went bust in West Texas. And Denny said, you know, we've got 4 stores that could use some TLC, and we would like to see if you two would like to buy them, and packed up the car and moved to West Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were a little bit of the turnaround person here. You were taking the franchises that people didn't want.
Well, so what happens is Denny's wasn't big on franchising back then. They had more corporate stores. But I think they realized that after the oil went bust, these stores needed attention in the market. They couldn't be operated as efficiently remotely. So it became my opportunity. And the interesting thing about it is when you're 23 years old and you don't have a lot of money, you're not going to get offered great stuff. You're going to have to do a turnaround situation where you're either going to make it or break it, right? And so we just choose to work our butts off and make them successful and be in the restaurants. And I worked 17 hours a day, and, you know, it ended up paying off.
Yeah. So when was the first time then that you got a loan to?
So interestingly, so to buy the restaurants, we took money off every credit card we could get our hands on. So go into the bank. And this was before that was ever done. This was in the early 80s. So the first loan I ever got is interesting. I moved to Texas in 1986 and the savings and loan crash had happened and I hadn't lived in Texas 2 years. And so nobody would loan me any money. I needed to buy a fax machine, if you can believe that's how long ago it was. And fax machines were $3,000 and I didn't have $3,000. That was the new technology at the time. But there was a man, so they couldn't loan me money because I hadn't lived in Texas 2 years. So there was a man that overheard my conversation who said, he says, my son has a trust fund. And what I do is I help people. I charge you a higher interest rate, but I'll loan you money out of my son's trust fund. Well, he did it. I borrowed the $3,000. Him and I became friends. And he says, I'm going to teach you how to borrow money. He says, I'm going to loan you $10,000 and you're going to get it paid off. And then I'm going to loan you $25,000. And then I'm going to loan you $100,000. And by the time we're done, you're going to be able to borrow money. And he was a huge mentor to me. He's still my friend. His name is Jim Orcutt. He's in his 80s now. But I learned so much from him. And he taught me how to keep my Dun & Bradstreet clean the right way. And, everything about what I needed to go out and borrow money.
And so for our listeners, tell us what that means, keep your Dun & Bradstreet.
So what happens is when you have vendors that you pay, let's say I pay Ecolab, I pay Superior Uniform, whatever the company is, they report if I pay timely. Like some companies don't report at all, but let's say you're 10 days late, that shows up and it lowers your credit rating business-wise on a Dun & Bradstreet. So he would pull my Dun & Bradstreet every 60 days to make sure nobody reported anything that shouldn't have been. Because what happens is sometimes, let's say you pay off a loan, it doesn't get reported that it's paid off. It doesn't necessarily mean you've done something bad. It just means you've got to pay attention and make sure if you paid off a loan, they release the UCC. That if you have a bad reporting, why do you have it? And you have to call them and get it cleared up because vendors make mistakes.
Sure.
Creditors make mistakes. So I was always very diligent about watching my Dun & Bradstreet and it was always pretty good. Had a couple of issues where, again, it was UCCs the lenders didn't release. Not my fault. But once you clean that up, you look even better and better to prospective lenders.
So how many Denny's are corporate owned today and how many are franchised?
Today, so let's see. Today there are about 65 corporate owned stores and the remainder of the fleet, which is about 1,350, is all franchise.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know in Angel World, we've had a couple entrepreneurs in the past who have come to us and said, hey, we want to franchise our idea, whatever it is. Which I know for a lot of the angels I've talked to, they get nervous. They think, franchising is so laborious and very costly and things like that. But your experience,
I love it.
You've been in it for a long time.
I love franchising. Yeah. I'm going to tell you why I love it. So let's say I decided to build a restaurant and I called it Dawn's. Mm-hmm. I would have to create the menu, create the decor, figure out the recipes. What's my sign going to look like? The whole ball and chain of all of it, right? When you're with a franchise concept, that's all done for you. They've got, first off, a proven track record. There's numbers in place that you can say, okay, the average unit volume of a Denny's is X. You do this many customers a week on the average. This is the average rent. You've got P&Ls that you can look at. There's a history. There's a track record. So there's a safety in that. But the bigger part of franchising that I love is imagine if I had Dawn's restaurant. How many would I ultimately have versus how many I can have with the Denny's? Now think about this also. Some of my growth has been from buying restaurants from other franchisees who were ready to retire, buying stores from corporate that they were ready to maybe move out of that market. And then many I built or converted. So I can expand quicker as a franchise operation than I ever could building all my own sites.
Absolutely.
So I love franchising. Yes, there's a premium you pay for it. You pay royalties and advertising, but at the end of the day, I do believe it's very profitable.
Yeah. And then have you built a store from the ground up?
Oh, yeah, many.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. I've built many from the ground up. I've converted many from other concepts into Denny's. Sure. I have a mixture in my portfolio.
Yeah, wow. And how long does that usually take? If you're like, okay, I'm going to go in here, do you do like, I'm guessing, a market study to see?
Yeah, so we do a demographic package. And anytime you open a new restaurant, Denny's makes you do a pretty extensive package of what do you estimate the sales to be? What are the car counts? What are the aerial shots? How long is it going to take to get a permit? You do a pretty thorough package, and then they have to approve it, evaluate it. They send somebody out to look at the site to make sure it meets their specifications. They want to know, is there a hospital nearby? Is there a mall? Is there a movie theater? Right. Not that it makes a difference, but they want to know everything about the trade area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm guessing.
And the other thing is they want to make sure there's not another Denny's so close by that it would encroach upon another franchisee, encroach upon corporate. Because you want to have a good success rate. You put a lot of money into a new development, and you want to have the best odds for success.
Yeah. And so, how many Denny's restaurants do you own today? I know it's just a lot.
Well, it's interesting. I've owned about 120, but because I've been in business 40 years, this month is my 40-year anniversary of owning my own restaurant. Yeah, 40
Congratulations.
years. Things happen. Trade areas move away, bridges are built, you lose an exit. Sometimes you scale back because you're aging up. So today I own about 72.
Wow.
Now I will tell you that I had, right before the pandemic hit, I had 92. And so the pandemic hit us pretty hard.
Yeah.
There are areas in small town America that just didn't recover the way bigger cities did. People moved away. Staffing's been difficult,
Yes.
but I still have a nice amount in my portfolio.
Yeah. I would imagine staffing. I mean, we saw it everywhere that staffing was so challenging.
And still, go into a hotel, and how many times do they say, well, if you want your room clean, let us know in advance, or room service is now a bag brought to your door instead of a cart wheeled in.
Yeah,
with,
exactly.
Someone setting it up. So I think it speaks to the labor shortages that we're having in the country. And I hope that everything is cyclical and that will change, but it's what we have to deal with now. The 24-hour model's been hard. People don't want to work on the third shift all the time. So that's been a little more of a struggle for us than, say, day shift.
Right.
But, we're adapting to all of that.
And are all of the Denny's open 24 hours?
Well, they were pre-pandemic, but not anymore.
Not anymore. That's too bad. And then what about, where are all of your stores located?
So all my Denny's, I have restaurants in 7 states. My Denny's are in 6 states. So I'm in Texas, Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Illinois, and my very first restaurant. And I have one restaurant in Arizona that's a non-Denny's, but I bought it from Denny's. So to me, it's Denny's.
Oh,
because it was the first restaurant I ever bought, and I bought it from them.
What a great story.
Yeah, it's been a fun journey. People always say to me, hey, you're in the restaurant business. What's your favorite restaurant? And I'm like, are you kidding me? The one that pays my mortgage.
That's right. Yes. So what's some advice that you would have for somebody who is just getting into, even if it's not the restaurant business, but, a business where maybe, they're female, they're trying to break into this, what's some of the things that you wish you knew?
I have a lot of thoughts about that. So first off, if you're looking to get into franchising, I would highly research the company, how long they've been in business, how many locations they have, and I would talk to franchisees, and I'd make sure that I looked at a P&L, talk anybody into sharing the data. If it's a publicly traded company, that information is usually available. If it's privately held, you have to get it through other means typically. But I would definitely talk to franchisees in the system. I have shied away from opportunities giving advice to people where they've only had 3 locations, 4 locations, because I don't think there's enough track record for me to be able to put my seal of approval on something like that. I want to see a trend. There's so much in business that's cyclical, and unless you've been through somewhat of a cycle, you don't know how things perform in a downturn.
Right.
And then, so if you're starting your own business and you're not part of a franchise with a track record, I would make sure I do as much due diligence as I possibly could. So for example, had somebody come to me, was going to open a retail store. what does the lease terms look like? How long are you in for it? What's your personal guarantee? What's your investment? How long is it going to take to recoup? I want to say one great thing about franchising that I've learned is once you get to 5 locations, it's a lot easier to get money. And I say that because the lenders look at the franchise and they say, oh, okay, these are a stable company. They have criteria to be a franchisee. You usually have to have a certain amount of net worth, a certain amount of money in the bank, a certain amount of experience. So they look favorably towards franchises. And a lot of franchise organizations, they have deals in place with lenders where, okay, let's say franchisee doesn't succeed. We'll put our best efforts forward to put someone else in the property. So you, Mr. Lender, are at less risk. So there's a lot of great things about franchising that can help somebody get started.
Mm-hmm. And have you ever helped anyone take their business and turn it into a franchise business?
Sort of. It didn't work. So what happened is it became a situation with a partnership that didn't work, which I advised against, but they were headstrong on doing it. So I've never taken them fully to franchising, but I've given an awful lot of advice. There's a young gal in the film who gives a presentation that's taking her company to franchising, and I put her in contact with a few people, and she only had 2 locations, and kind of advised her on what I thought would be great to help her move the process along. And she's getting development agreements and getting things rolling. So I've offered advice, but I haven't actually been the person taking him to that step.
So we talked a little bit before the show. What are some of the projects that you're really passionate about right now, especially the things that Denny's are doing that people don't realize?
Well, so many passion projects that Denny's is doing. Number one, I'm really proud of our mobile relief diner program. So what we have is a mobile restaurant that goes around to areas of distress, hurricanes, floods, fires, tornadoes, cities in need, and we feed the community.
I love that. And Asheville
we were in Asheville. We go all over America with our diner, and it is a mobile restaurant. It's got a dish machine in there. It's got a kitchen. We did a thing in San Antonio because we're pretty passionate about Special Olympics, where we brought the mobile relief diner to San Antonio. We fed all the special athletes, all the law enforcement. And then Denny said, well, if we're taking the mobile relief diner to San Antonio, let's use it as much as we can. Let's pick somewhere else. So we took it to Haven for Hope, which is a homeless center. It's almost like a big campus. And what was interesting about that is that the homeless, while the city helps feed them from food banks and everything, they hadn't had protein. So when we were cooking up bacon and sausage, the homeless were like, we haven't had meat. And it was like, wow, we take for granted the luxuries that we get. And the beautiful part about the mobile relief diner is that our employees work in it. We work in it. It's community effort. And it's just a really wonderful team building community event, as well as helping to serve people in need. And then we're also involved in a project called No Kid Hungry, where we raise money so no child in America goes hungry. And we have something really special at Denny's too, where all of our restaurants donate to what's called the Power Fund, where if we have anybody in the Denny's system that's in need, they can apply for assistance, and we give them up to $5,000. So we do a lot to try and help. Yeah. And those are the feel-good things that make you feel good about your brand, about your own life, that you're doing something to contribute. And that's also the beautiful thing about being part of a franchise is there's a group of us and there's a pool of people, and we're not alone. We're pooling resources and doing things together for a bigger impact.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we'll raise millions for No Kid Hungry. I don't know how much we're at now. It's over $11 million, but
wow.
Yeah. And we're really excited. We've been a partner with theirs for probably 11 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize just how much Denny's is doing out there.
I don't think that they do, because we don't talk enough about those things. I do have a really fun story that I'd love to share. And that's about, I'm sure everybody's heard of NVIDIA.
Sure.
It's the $1 trillion company. Well, he started as a busboy at Denny's.
Oh my gosh.
And he created his his idea in a booth in Denny's. So great things happen at Denny's for sure.
Wow. We were just talking about NVIDIA on a previous episode because we had a CTO from an AI company come on and talk a lot about the different pieces of AI.
Well, Jensen Wong was just at our franchise convention this month. I was just with him. He is the loveliest, most down-to-earth guy. He brought his whole family to our convention, shared stories about what it was like for him working at Denny's. He came over from, I think it was Taiwan when he was 15 years old, got a job in Seattle. And, people don't understand the power of the restaurant industry. I mean, I always say everyone should work in a restaurant once in their life because you meet people from every walk of life and you get to appreciate different personalities and the way that people believe. The poor, the rich, the immigrant, the different types of people that live in our society. And it's great to see the diversity, and it's all in a Denny's. And that's what I loved about it. I met young people, old people, Hispanics, every race, and you just get an appreciation for what they like to eat, what's important to them, things that you wouldn't normally know just living in your everyday life. Like we know in San Antonio, the Hispanics, you have got to have hot sauce.
Yeah.
There are things that different ethnicities love to eat. And so I learned so much working at Denny's and with your employees too. I mean, if you can take somebody that starts as a busboy and builds $1 trillion company, come on.
That's so good. I love that story. So let's talk a little bit about the movie. Show Her the Money.
Passion project for sure.
Love everything about it. So what made you decide to get involved with the movie?
All right. So Catherine Gray.
Of course. Yes.
She called me and told me she had this project and women only get 2% of venture capital. And, it was a cold call kind of thing. I didn't know her. And I'm sitting on an airplane. I think I'm flying to LA and I'm talking on the phone to someone. I don't even recall who, maybe Lupita. And I'm saying, she wants me to do this project. Says women only get 2% of venture capital money. I'm like, I find that hard to believe. And I don't know if I should do the project. Well, I'm getting off the plane and a gentleman taps me on the shoulder and he says, I didn't mean to eavesdrop on your conversation, but I'm a venture capitalist in healthcare. And it's absolutely true. Women only get 2%.
Wow.
Got off the plane. I called Catherine and I said, you know what? I'm in.
That's so good.
Yeah, it was, it's one of those serendipitous moments where you go, somebody's saying a higher power, you need to do this. And boy, I loved every part of being involved with this project. And it was a huge time commitment. Yeah. And I already have a full-time job. But it was worth every minute. And the people involved in the film and the women, the founders, I mean, everybody was just a delight.
And your family got to
participate? My family, what's it like? How great is it to shoot a movie with your family? My sons have cameos in it. My office, of course, the Denny's logos all over the movie. Yes. And my best friend, Sharon Gless, Emmy Award-winning actress, she films it with me. So it's fun to get to film with my family, my best friend. And then, it's such a family project in a way that to be on the road with all of them.
Yes.
And traveling with the women and hearing their journeys and their stories. And what I found fascinating is I really am